Good evening, my dear friends, fellow photographers, travelers, weeks and pass, and here is come to the 5th episode of my travelogues to Russia, and also will be the last episode. At the end of these episodes, we'll be moving on to a new nation, a nation that is far away from Malaysia, with have a different of 12 hours of time zones. A nation that have a lot of world number ones, the highest lakes, the highest capital cities, the largest salt flats, and many more mysterious places that you can explore in this mysterious nation. I will share with you at the end of these episodes. I hope you enjoy this evening, the last episode to St. Petersburg of Russia. Now, as I said earlier, St. Petersburg is just a big city with a lot of history. It's the imperial capital of the Tsar dynasty for close to 200 years. And therefore, while going through this St. Petersburg, we realized that actually there are a lot of palaces, beautiful palaces and parks and monuments, and also cathedrals that need to share for the friends who have not been to Russia. And I will go through a very important palace, beside the palace that we have dealt with, the State Hermitage Palace, that was State Hermitage Museum that was actually done last week. In today, we are going to deal with PETERHOF Grand Palace. It's also Imperial Palace, but this palace was housed the Peter the Great, the Tsars emperors who actually founded St. Petersburg. And you can see from the pictures that this is actually a very beautiful palace too, compared to the Catherine's Palace. Now, Peterhof Grand Palace was a luxurious imperial residence of the Emperor Peter the Great, which is also the founder of the St. Petersburg I mentioned just now. And as far as concerned, this palace complex houses a total of 30 rooms, each distinctively decorated. You will see later on in my pictures how luxuriously decorated of all these rooms. The palace, of course, now have turned into architectural museums, which is worthy and iconic tourist attractions. And it's famous especially for its grand cascade Samson's fountains. During our visit, because it's the winter, so we didn't visit the gardens. And the fountains, actually, they have stopped operating because all the water was frozen, right? We only can see all the frozen ice on the fountains. And the museum also displays many of the ruler artifacts, and which we're going to see them also later on in my pictures. Now, for the architectural exhibits, they include maritime painting, chandeliers, wall coverings, decorations, and also the timber floorings. The building architectures incline towards Petrine's Baroque style of early 18th century type architectures, because the influence by the Europes is very, very strong. Now, next to the palace house one of the most beautiful parks in Russia, which is divided into the upper and lower gardens, right? And the grand cascading garden, the fountain, the Samson fountains, is located on the upper gardens, while the lower garden are mainly the greens. And I was even told that by someone saying that this garden housed the most fountain probably in the world. So let's look at the images that you see now. This is actually when we are walk away from the palace, and we are almost reaching the lower gardens, and we are look back at this grand palace, and you can see, of course, snow covering, and you can see this cascading Samson fountains was so beautiful, and you can see all the sculptures have been painted in goldish, brilliant goldish color. And this is another image at a closer look at it. And as I say, our visit is the winter, so everywhere is white. But the whitish snow gives us a different type of feel, and of course, if we will come during summer, I believe that I was told is also, you were also very surprised. This garden is very beautiful, very well landscapes. And as usual, as it's an emperor's residence, you can see that the decoration, the architecture aspect of it are very elaborated and intricately done. And you can see that all the domes of the roof, everything are still very outstanding. And this is when we are walking toward the palace and looking for the entrance to enter to this museum. And of course, we are walking on the snow and with extreme care. And this is a closer looks of the buildings, the palace buildings, as we go close. And this is another closer image of the cascading fountains. You can see the figures, the sculpture, one after the other, are well lined up on both sides of the fountain. The only regret that you can't see any water flowing, or the fountain is not operating. Of course, at this time of the years, how could they expect the fountain to be operating? And at the top, right at the center of this cascading fountains, we look down. You can see that there is there's a look like a waterway. Actually, it's a channels. They lead you to the river. In other words, this fountain, these gardens, is actually beside the river Neva, and therefore, if any important guests of the emperor were to arrive, they actually can just park near the riverside and then use a smaller boat to come into the palace through these channels. So it's very uniquely done in such a way that it makes so convenient for the visitor of the emperor to come to the palace and visit him. And this is some, of course, the images, closer look of the dome and the roof of the palace. And of course, the golden color is the main color that actually appear in a lot of elements or ornaments on the buildings. And as you walk into the palace, of course, as usual, that all palaces that during our visit, we have to have our shoe covered up to ensure the soil, the interior of the palace, and also to afraid that the sand particles that are attached to our shoe may actually cause abrasion and cause damages to the surface of the flooring, the timber flooring. Most of it are timber flooring. And you look at this image, you can see actually is another very exclusively, intensively, intricately designed type of interior design. And you can see it's not far different. I mean, it's in terms of the grandness, not far from the State Hermitage Museum. And also, you look at it itself, it also have painting everywhere. And in this case, in this room itself, you see that it is above the ceiling. There's a very large painting. And this is another view of the interior of this Peterhof Grand Palace. And of course, the flooring is all timber flooring. I think that we can understand that because in country like Russia, we have more than half a year in the winter. I think no other flooring more suitable than a timber flooring. The timber is the best insulation materials, and therefore it's more comfortable to live in the winter zone or in area where it's actually have winter. This is another room whereby you can see the color scheme has started to change. But again, you don't run far from using gold colors as the main color scheme in this Peterhof Palace. And you can look at the floor. If you look at this image, you look at the floor. You can see that also it's very, very unique, and the design is very, I should say, they really spend a lot of thinking when they design these buildings. It make every attempt that is unique in every corners. You look at it itself, you find that actually it can cost many craftsmen, many hundreds of hours to do that. And this, sorry, go back a bit, it's jump a bit far. All right. Now, there are three pictures here, right? And actually is taking on the same room. And as far as concerned, the leftmost and rightmost is just as a two end of the ceiling, and to show you the painting above the ceiling. Well, the middle image is with the intention to show you that the floorings, and of course this is also a long cylinder hall as what we actually encountered in the earlier episode in Catherine Palace. And here I'm trying to, not only on the right, I'm trying to show you a pictures that actually taken on the ceiling. This is a picture from the ceiling. And exactly a portion of it itself to show exactly how well the painting was done, and it's so impressive. And our rooms, generally I realize actually in this Peterhof Grand Palace, quite a number of rooms, they actually favorite the design color scheme using goldish color and white. So you can see that the only thing only the ornaments, the decoration is different, but actually they're still using these two main colors to blend out quite a number of these grand rooms in his palace. And this is another a bit different from the other previous few rooms. And now you can see the other color coming in. And important thing is that it's here not only the floorings, the ceiling works, the cornices, and the decoration, the ornament on the wall. Like in this picture, in this room, you realize actually they also start bringing in curtains, the blind. And again, later on you can see that it's also become part of the impressive interior design and decorations. Like in this case, they're using the red colors blind on the windows, and at the same time look at the color, the blue. I think it's green colors line that on the ceiling as well on the wall. It's so well blended out. And as far as flooring is concerned, you have another set of design, right? And of course, as usual, you still found a lot of pictures, paintings on the wall. But of course, the amount of painting you found in this palace is much more less than in this Catherine the Great palace. So this is some of the view of on the side of the wall, and of course you still look at the chandeliers, right? And also equally impressive. And this is just to getting close to the columns, to the painting on the columns, and also to the corner of the building. And you just look at the cornices, the design, the inlay, right, on the ceiling and also on the wall. A much closer view. And this is just to give you a sight at the end, both end of the wall. And you can see there are two doors. This actually is a typical area whereby when you enter, that room to room itself actually is going for a very long and slanted out building. Just like you can see even from the picture, at the first few pictures when you look from the outside facade, it's spread over a very long land, right? So therefore, we are basically walking from one end of the room to next room, and then it's a long rectangular room, and so you're moving in, and therefore we are moving in from one door, and we may come back to the same room because you're going from one end. That means a U-turn back. So you may come back to this room on the return journey. And this is the painting. And this maritime painting, as I mentioned just now, is a bit unique from the collection from Catherine. Catherine brought it from Berlin, from the Berlin artist. But as far as concerned, this actually is not. It's a painting that engaged, the artist engaged by the Peter the Great, and the maritime type of painting is the characteristic or the collections that they found in this palace. And this is just to show you the timber inlay on the floor. All right, and it's not easy. In French speaking, I'm in the construction line. I know very well that to do this type of timber inlay, it really had to be very, very tip-top skills in doing that. And it's extremely intricate and difficult to do and time-consuming. And this and other pictures focus on just the timber floorings on the different sections of the floor of this palace. Well, we are moving on to another rooms, and you can see that now the curtain color have changed, and they're using the goldish color. And as usual, you can't run away with painting, and you can see the artifacts of used by the Peter the Great are some displacing around the building, along the between the rooms, and you can see more of this. But of course, you are not allowed to touch, of course. And again, you sure that you have museum personnel gathered in each room. And interestingly, when we are there, you have to follow very closely to our tour guide, and you can only go forward with the tour guide. You can only move together with the tour guide, and you cannot go back, do a reverse gear. Let's say you enter this room number 1, then you go to room number 2, then you thought of, I want to take some more picture, I want to go back to room number 1. Unfortunately, you are not allowed to do so. You are stuck in room number 2. And you go to room number 3, you are stuck in 3. You cannot go back to number 2. And if you go too fast, they will ask you, where is your tour guide? They ask you to walk close to the tour guide. So this is somehow they control to ensure that there's no reverse flow, because although we are there during winter, there's not many visitors. But imagine if during the summer itself, if you allow the visitor, the crowd, do a reverse flow itself, it could be chaotic, in the museum. So I can understand they practice one-way street type of control. So mind you that you are there, please take note of this ruling. And you can see the maritime painting now on the wall. The 4 painting, talking about wall. The picture of the wall. Warships on fires and things like that. And this is actually the painting on the ceiling. Right, and of course that you can enjoy it now because it's already in the form of picture on the screen. But you really want to see it, you have to really turn your head right up 90 degrees from your body before you can really enjoy looking at these pictures. The painting on above the ceiling, above your head. So we also come to rooms that have been for dining purposes. And usually it's the same thing happened in Catherine's the palace and also this Peterhof palace itself. They have a few rooms catered for dining purposes, and again is for different function. If you are a royal family, you probably use the different room, different set of cutlery, and everything will not be the same. I mean the displays, everything, the item that you use, the plate, the fork, everything could be a complete different set, different design. Make it distinctly different, and they have make sure that they don't mix up. So this is the practice that been actually in this royal family or in this Tar dynasty. So as usual, you look at the wall, this color scheme start to change. But then you realize that now you have a ceramic or porcelain type of object on the wall. Like what I told you last week, that we have a bluish ceramic or porcelain type of structures that mounted on the wall. Exactly this also is the heater. Same thing that you saw in the previous episode, and is also here because in the ancient time they didn't have they didn't have a proper heating system, and this is one of the best heating systems. There is actually this porcelain object itself. Then you can put in. You can see there's one little hole on the rightmost picture there. There's one little hole. I'm sorry, it's covered by my pictures. There's one little hole at the bottom of this porcelain object, whereby that's where they put in the burning coal, and then when you close it, the burning coal will generate heat. The heat will then transmit through the surface of the porcelain. Here, this is a lot of portraiture pictures of people, big and small, and I was told that these are all the classmates or schoolmates of the emperor's daughter, and it's so many of it, and I can't really take every one of them, but it's completely occupied one side of the wall, and also at the other side of both long side of the wall they also have, like what you see in the picture now, right above it, And this is the view against on the ceiling above in these rooms. And you notice that as I mentioned earlier, the curtains, the blind, and it also form part of very unique decorative items that have been used in this palace. That it's not the same. Every room again is not the same. Not only the everything, but the curtain itself, they use the color, also not the same. This is just a close shot of the portrait of those ladies, young ladies, right, in these rooms. All are very young ladies and men. I was told these are all the friends to the daughter of the emperors. This is again another painting above the ceiling. There's some distortion, I think, because using wide angle lens, I expected to have some form of lens distortion to the image. And we are moving from those big functional hall, from so-called the dining hall, and they're now moving to private rooms that actually used by the royal families, used by the emperor, the Peter the Great. And here you can see more of the artifacts, the furnitures, and that have been used by the emperors. So in this part of the wall, hall, I mean in rooms, you realize that there's something you need to notice, that there is actually the wallpaper now. They start introducing wallpaper to rooms. These rooms, of course, a much smaller room compared with just now the hall we came across the last few number of hall. There are many smaller rooms like that that actually strictly are actually occupied by the royal families and also the emperors. See, these are next rooms. You see the wallpapers have started to change in color, different color, and look at the floor as well. You sure that, as I mentioned earlier, not a single rooms are the same in design. Every room are unique in itself, identical, non-identical in this aspect. Right. So this is just some closer views of these rooms. These are another rooms. These rooms are all much smaller, right? But they contain a lot of furnitures and artifacts and painting on the wall. They have a lot of painting on the wall, and this is something you can enjoy looking at it itself. And this is a place where the royal family have their rest. It's my resting area. And you can see that the sofa there, right, is so uniquely decorated, and the color is again much more suited for resting. These are closer looks. Is again pictures, closer look at it, and also another long sofa for the family people to sit and get together. And these are also the chandeliers that are in that rooms. And other rooms. This is believed to be his study rooms or working rooms. But you can see that there is some writing tables. So in summary, I have to say that actually it's actually more toward architecture display. As I said earlier, it's an architectural museum. The interesting part is on all the architecture displays and also the colors. All those things are the main gist of it. Painting and artifact, it just happened to be a blend with it, and it was actually used by the emperors. And these are some of the expensive artifacts, the clocks, and all those displays. This is just some of it. Right. So literally we are moving from room to rooms, much smaller rooms after the grand hall. So this, I can't really exactly see this room is for what purposes, but I think that this seems to be a very exclusive place. The design and the decoration is much more elaborated. Oh yes, it is the bedrooms of the emperors. Some of the displays. And of course, you also have some painting. Even the wood carvings was on the wall, right? It's so outstanding. And then the next thing is that we're going to move on to one of very important place of interest again in St. Petersburg. There is St. Isaac Cathedrals. I will consider these cathedrals as the most beautiful Orthodox church in Russia. So far, as I said earlier in my earliest, I have actually bring you to two of them, and this is the third one. But this is the grandest one and the biggest one. And later on you can see with your own eyes of how exclusively that this Orthodox church has been decorated internally. St. Isaac Cathedral is a Russian Orthodox church which began as a small wooden church in the year 1710. And today this cathedral is a museum. The current building structure was built between 1818 till 1858. It's about 40 years duration. St. Isaac Cathedral is not only the largest cathedral in Russia, but also one of the most impressive landmarks of the Russian imperial capital, St. Petersburg. Now, until today, the church service still hold there on major occasions. The cathedral's facades are decorated with sculptures and massive granite columns made of single piece of red granite. Very, very huge and very, very heavy. The main doors are made of bronze covered in relief. Cathedral's main golden dome is of 21.8 meter in diameter and was stood 101.5 meter above ground. There are records saying that this construction of these cathedrals used up to 882 pounds of gold and 18 tons of precious, semi-precious stone and 1,000 tons of bronze which used on the door. There is an observation platform above the cathedrals, but you need to climb 238 steps. Why? Because we were there. I am counting the steps. And the last step is exactly 238. What a good number to the Chinese. And we are there. Later I'll show you some pictures. Above this viewing platform, we can have a very grand view of St. Petersburg. So this is actually the view of these cathedrals. And you can see that the columns, the round granite columns, that even from far is of that size. When you go near, you can see how huge these grand solid granite columns that have been erected in this cathedral. A closer view. So you may wonder at that time, there's no major machinery. How are they going to put up this massive, heavy, solid, round marbles or granite columns? How are they managed to do so? And this is just when I go near, look up, you can see that it's very, very long, very tall. This granite column is very, very long. And I can say easily it's about maybe 2-3 story or maybe 10 meter above ground. I didn't really have a chance to measure or can find any information about what's the length of the column. But I'm sure that from the look at it itself, it will be easily 10 meter at least. And this is why I'm saying that the grand bronze relief on the door, the metal door, the bronze metal doors to these cathedrals is is very, very grand, and I can still look at it and enjoy the carving. I just wonder how this was done. But anyway, it's very impressive. Here, when you enter to this Cathedral Museum, they actually at one corner they do models, a wooden structure model, and also they have a video clips to share with you how this column actually have been erected during their time in the early 18th century. Remember that St. Petersburg's Peter the Great actually founded the St. Petersburg, and therefore actually the cathedral was built in the beginning 18th century. So you were able to have from the video clip to have an understanding of how this huge, massive, huge, solid granite or marble columns have been erected. Here now you have a look at the grand interior of these St. Isaac's cathedrals. Just look at it. This is just only one of the corner. And then look up, you can see that the column capitals, the arches, against every corners are decorated and with a lot of painting. This is just another view. And the huge domes of the cathedral is just right shown in this picture above. The pictures now at the topmost part, at the center topmost part, that is actually the dome. This is just a closer view of it. And another view of that at a much closer distance. On the other side, beside the main dome, I think equally every corner of these cathedrals is fascinating. I'm trying to show you all the four corners because I couldn't left any corner out because each corner is so different from the other and so beautiful that I don't want to miss. So I make sure that every corner a picture has been taken. And this is just right below. I'll give you a better view of that. Right below the painting. Zoom in. Right at the dome. Now, right below the dome, get a perfect symmetrical view of the decoration of these domes. I like this picture very much. It become the cover picture of my albums. Right, this is just more of a picture of this St. Isaac cathedrals and other smaller domes. Even the chandelier is so beautiful. And this is just three pictures of the one corner of the cathedrals. I'll tend to move a bit slower in this case because I think this picture is worth spending a bit more time to look at it itself. That's why I have recommended a friend in future that when they follow through my travelogue itself, because I presented a lot of pictures, and the best way to view this picture is not from handphone. The best way to view this picture is on your smart TV. They have a big screen that you can see this picture will all stand out. You can see very detailed. You can see the detail of it, from a big picture. When you see from handphone, you can't really see anything. But of course, you have an idea of it. But you want to see the fine detail of the images itself. The only way to see it is watching on TV. I would strongly recommend that you watch on TV. So you can see that I've been showing so many images just between these cathedrals, and I couldn't stop it. In fact, I didn't have even a single minute that I don't press my shutter buttons off my cameras. And this is at the back there, on the leftmost, you can see that there is actually one of the metal doors, the bronze door. Now these two pictures are not identical, actually taken at two corners of the arch, and it's right beside the main dome. The intention is to show you that the painting and the arch, the painting on the arch and also at the top of the column, the capital there is not the same. In other words, as I said earlier, they can look symmetrical, but actually the inlay, the pictures that they put on is not the same at all. So I have taken all the four corners. And now, after ascending 238 steps, you finally reach the top, the viewing platform right next to the main domes, which is actually about 101 meters above ground. And because St. Petersburg is lying on quite a flat land, as I said earlier, St. Petersburg was actually occupied close to 42 islands and with more than 300 bridges. You can find more than 300 bridges in St. Petersburg. No, sorry, yes, St. Petersburg. And therefore, above these St. Isaac's viewing platforms, right beside the main domes, you can able to view the St. Petersburg's 360 degree. Of course, you have to walk around the domes and have a full view of the St. Petersburg. This is one of the angle. And the far end is the gardens, and then after the garden is the river. This is another corner, the south. You can see the word south on the bottom of these pictures. And this happened, the statue of the Peter the Great was placed not far from St. Isaac Cathedral. We also come to monuments. The monument they read as Zachinikum, I'm sorry I can't spell correctly, Leningrad monuments. Actually is the heroes of war, is to give us a better understanding, and it's because over here it's not only a monument, it's also there's a museum, underground museum. And there are a lot of sculptures depict during the wartime, how the peoples fought the war, how they unite fought against their enemies. inside the museum, we were the only visitor. Of course, we are given the presentations, video presentations, and this is some of the painting or artworks on the grand wall. Sorry. And then we, by the time we reach this Peter and Paul fortress, it's already close to evening because in winter, the daytime is shorter, and about 4:30, actually the sky starts getting dark. By 5 probably it's already almost the sunset. Right. So although you arrive there just before sunset, but the sky gets dark very fast. And we are coming to this place, and we were told that this is actually the resting place of the Tatars ruler, the Tsar ruler, we call them. And they call this place the Rabbit Islands. Now I will go through about this on the picture. Now, as far as the Peter and Paul Fortress, actually is the oldest landmark in St. Petersburg, and is an iconic masterpiece of the 18th century architectures. A fortress that have the purpose of defending the newly conquered land at the time, because remember that St. Petersburg was actually formed by Peter the Great after he successful conquered Sweden, right? And then so he built his imperial capital here, and therefore he wanted to protect his imperial capitals. So he built a fortress. That's the initial plan. Then later on, this fortress was then turned into political prisons. And then over time, you realize this inside this fortress, they also have a cathedrals. Right? And we'll understand that this cathedral in this fortress is the highest cathedral in Russia, with a height of 122 meters. And the local name this Delta Rabbit Island because it looked like a rabbit shape. And within the fortress itself, the cathedral lay the remains of the rulers of the imperial empire, both the emperor and the empress. That means that Catherine the Great and Peter the Great, the remains are actually in this Peter and Paul fortress. So we have a quick walk because the sky is getting dark. So I'm not able to get some very good images because it's very, very misty, and sky is getting dark very, very fast. And in low light, we can't use flashlight because I think the flashlight can't do much, and we spoil the image. It's just an outer view of the fortress. And this is the one I mentioned, the tallest cathedrals in Russia. And then finally, we come to this Church of Savior in Blood. And during a visit to this place, unfortunately, because during winter is actually a so-called off-peak season, and most of these places are undergone upgradings or maintenance, and therefore, when we're there, actually it's not open for visiting. But I want to share with you that if you have a chance to go to Russia, I think this is also another place of interest that not to be missed. For simple reason is that this Church of Savior in Blood, or even some people call them Savior on Spare Bloods, is prominently situated along Gibodo channel, the name I can't spell correctly, in St. Petersburg. And the church is one of the main sites in St. Petersburg, which was constructed in the year 1883 and completing in 1907, and was achieved by the imperial family as a memorial to the emperors Alexander II. Now the church have a strong medieval Russian architecture in the spirit of romantic nationalism. The church contains over 7,500 meters square of mosaic, possibly ranking second in the world. This is the reason why I recommend you to visit this, to see the mosaic works inside this cathedral or church. Inside the church, wall and ceiling are completely covered, intricately detailed mosaic. So this is actually, even though we didn't have a chance to go inside, but just looking at the exterior itself is also well decorated. Right, this is just a various view from all corners, as far as we can. You really can see that the decoration is very, very unique in this church. Then over some free time, we also roaming around in St. Petersburg. Of course, it's along the way. And the picture you see actually is a ceramic mural wall in St. Petersburg, and happened to come across that. I quickly take a snap of it. I was quite impressed of that, the craftsmanship. And this is actually another one called rostral columns. There are two of them, face each other but at a distance apart. And this is also another monument. It was donated by ancient, they call ancient Egyptian SPHINX. I was told that it donated by Egyptian governments. And we also come across a warship, AURORA Cruiser Warship Museum. A warship term museum is the most close to 100 years. And I was told this is actually the warship that fired the first shot that led to the collapse of the Tsar emperors. They mean the imperial emperors of Russia. And also there's a ship restaurants. Of course, we didn't visit these restaurants. And the end of today's presentation. So I actually have covered Russia, and I promise you that to share with you the nation that I'm going to share with you in the coming weeks is Bolivia in South America. A place that we need to, on the flight, for more than 24 hours, excluding transit time. But again, there's no direct flight. And we landed in Peru, Lima, the capital city of Peru. Then we continue our journey to Bolivia, then back to Peru. So I will share with you on this Bolivia first in these coming weeks. And later on I found a time slot for me to share with you my travelogues to Peru. And I hope that you enjoy it. If you enjoy my travelogues, please do subscribe, like, and share so that friends and family of yours can be literally, virtually around the world at the comfort of your home. Right? And as I say, being able to travel, right, is always a good thing. And I have to thank you for viewing until this point. And I hope that in the coming weeks, I can see you again in this live streamings to my next episode, to a nation far away from Malaysia. And for those who are not from Malaysia, friends around the world, then it's also a very interesting place that I wish to share with you. That will be my next nation that I pick on. Thank you very much and for viewing.